Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Jen and I moved from South Africa to England in 1999 and then from England to New Zealand in 2011. So I've emigrated twice and I've learned a few things along the way, and one of the things that I learned is that it is super expensive to emigrate. We've all heard that before, but you may be wondering, why is it so expensive? Where's all this money going? So I thought I'd make this video sharing some of the things that you need to budget for when making a move to a different country and roughly how much it's going to cost you. I can't share actual figures for a few reasons. First of all, my immigrating experiences were many years ago, and so the amounts that I paid then may not be relevant now. Secondly, you may be moving from a different country than I did, so it's no point me sharing things in pounds sterling if you live with Canadian dollars. Also, some of these expenses are incurred in your home country before you leave, and some of them are incurred in New Zealand after you arrive, so it's difficult to talk about changing currencies. So what I've decided to do is use a handy dandy symbol, which I will put up on the screen here, and I'm going to put $1 sign if the item in question is going to cost less than about $100 or in the tens. I will put $2 signs if it's going to cost in the hundreds, and I will put $3 signs if the item in question will cost in the thousands. So obviously the exact amount will vary, but you can tell from these symbols if it's going to be a relatively inexpensive expense or a very expensive expense. You'll have to do your own research into obviously how much these things are going to cost exactly for you. Some of these things you may not even need to budget for example, moving a pet. The aim of this video is to give you a rough idea of the kinds of things to budget for, and then you can take that and do your research. So the first thing you're going to need if you're moving to a different country is a visa or permission to go and live there. When we moved to England, we moved on an ancestry visa, and that was many years ago. When we moved from England to New Zealand, we came on residency. We obtained residency before we left England, so that's kind of more recent in my memory. Now, when you want to obtain residency, you will submit what's called an expression of interest. You're literally just saying, I'm interested in applying for residency, and even that has a cost associated when you submit that, so that is in the hundreds. Once you actually go to make your full residency application, that is in the thousands. Partner of a resident, that is also in the thousands. An essential skills work visa is in the hundreds, and a working holiday visa will also cost you in the hundreds. So you have to set aside quite a lot of money just for your visas. If you decide that you want to use an immigration consultant or agent to help you with your application, that will probably also be in the thousands. If that's something you want to do, I've heard many people say it was totally worth every penny. We can recommend New Zealand Shores as a legit one, because when you are facing so many expenses when you're immigrating, it's kind of daunting to see so many agents or consultancies advertise and not know if any of them are legit. Immigrating is expensive enough without throwing your money away on a scam. New Zealand Shores is legit. I will link them down below. But there's no point getting a visa if you don't even have a passport to put it in. So you're looking at usually in the hundreds to get a passport, and you're going to need one for each member of your family. You may need to undergo some medical tests as part of your application, and for our family this was in the thousands because there are 4 of us. So you're looking at least hundreds per person. You may also need to undergo an English test, the IELTS test, and I believe that's in the hundreds. I'll put the correct symbol up on the screen. We didn't have to do that, so I'm not au fait with that. As part of your application, you may also encounter courier fees. We actually drove from Lancashire down to London and we handed in our application in person because I just wanted to know that it was there and looked over and good to go. I didn't want to be sending things in the post or with courier, but if you are couriering things, you need to take that into account in your budget. You will also need police clearance certificates. This should be under $100. We had to get police clearance certificates for England and for South Africa when moving to New Zealand because we were citizens of both countries. And you may need unabridged copies of certain certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates, things like that, and that will be in the tens. So that is a lot of money already spent, and you've only just got your visas. You haven't even left yet. What you will need when you're ready to go is plane tickets, and this will probably cost you several thousand. It's hard to budget for this because you don't quite know when you're going to get your visa, and so you don't know what ticket prices are going to be like. It's not something that you can just book well in advance and take advantage of a special offer, so just bear that in mind. And you may also need to budget for temporary accommodation before you leave your home country. Maybe you can stay with family, maybe you're just leaving directly from the property you've been staying in. But in our case, we were renting our house out, so we vacated the house and we drove down to London. We spent a little bit of time with my cousin, and then we went and stayed in a hotel near Heathrow Airport, and this was a really good decision for us. We had that time where we had parted from family and I could be emotional and we could kind of brace ourselves for what was to come, have a meal, have a sleep, and then start fresh on our adventure together as a family the next day. I so appreciated not having farewells at the airport, because the actual logistics of leaving was enough to deal with. So that's just an extra little tip, but obviously we had to budget for the hotel and our meals the night before we left. I want to mention shipping goods. That is going to cost a lot of money. If you are sending an entire container with all of your household goods, that will cost you thousands. We sent a 20-foot container that was chock-a-block full. Friends of ours came over and sent a 40-foot container. You may just decide to have a part of a container. Regardless, it's going to cost you a lot of money. You may decide to just sell all of your things before you leave and start from scratch. You're going to need suitcases. We had 4 big suitcases and 4 carry-ons for our family of 4. I don't know anybody who has 4 massive suitcases lying around. You usually use smaller ones on holiday, so that may be something to budget for, getting extra suitcases. You are usually allowed a little bit extra weight in your luggage if you are on a one-way ticket. If you are sending a pet, that can be significantly more expensive as well. You're going to be spending hundreds on vet fees. You're going to be spending hundreds on an import permit, thousands for the actual air transfer, and then thousands again for quarantine. So it gets really expensive if you're bringing a pet. The MAF inspection fee is $120, and they want to look at anything that may be bringing biohazards into New Zealand. If they find something that they are not happy with, for example, if they find a tent in your belongings that has seeds and grass and things on it and hasn't been properly cleaned, they will contact you, and you have an option to either pay to have it destroyed or pay to have it cleaned. It will usually be in the tens to have it destroyed and in the hundreds to have it cleaned, but it's up to you. We had the inspection, but we didn't have anything come up as a problem, so we didn't have to pay that fee. If your goods have arrived in the country and you haven't actually got a permanent address to have them sent to yet, then you may have a possible storage fee until you have a permanent address. Something else to budget for is things to use while you're waiting for your goods to arrive. We sent all of our stuff from England about 6 weeks before we left, and then obviously we had about 6 weeks after we arrived in New Zealand until our stuff came. And you may want to just buy a few cheap bits and pieces to keep you going until your goods arrive. For example, a few cheap plates or a pot or things that you can live with without your stuff. An alternative is to budget for temporary accommodation that is fully furnished. This can be thousands of dollars, but it may be worth it to you. Speaking of money, you're going to want to move your money from your home country to your new country, and there will probably be transfer fees involved there as well. Okay, so you've arrived in your new country. These are in no particular order. I just kind of made a list as I thought of things, so it may hop around a little bit, but you're going to need to get around. So you're going to have to budget for car rental fees, which will be in the tens per day, so could rack up to hundreds very quickly. And you'll have to budget for buying a new car, or a new to you car, so this will be in the thousands. If you have school-aged children, you're going to need to stock them up in their school uniforms, and this is going to be definitely in the hundreds per child. You're going to want a place to stay, and this usually means renting, and so you're going to have to come up with a bond or a deposit and your first week's rent in advance. Your bond can be the equivalent of 5 to 6 weeks rent, so this is going to be in the thousands. You need to budget for restocking your pantry. So you may have done some research online with Countdown and Pack and Save and New World's websites and seen roughly what grocery shopping is going to cost your family per week. But your first initial few shops are going to be much more expensive because you need to buy all of your pantry basics from scratch. All of your herbs, spices, salt, pepper, condiments, everything that you usually reach for in your pantry is all going to have to be bought, and this is going to be hundreds. Budget for mistakes, and I know this sounds random, but just accept that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to buy things that seem like a good deal, and then you're going to later find out that they were actually really expensive and you could have got them for much cheaper elsewhere. You just don't know these things as a new immigrant, so just accept that it's part of the process and have enough money in your budget to absorb some of these extra expenses that you've made by mistake. Replacing plugs is the next thing on my list, and this sounds like a silly thing, but when you count up all of the appliances that you have in your household, and if you take into account that buying a replacement New Zealand plug to go on them is $5.37 per plug, you're looking at hundreds. I went through my house and I counted up at least 60 items that had plugs. And if you're buying them, like I said, $5.37 per plug, that's over $300 to replace your plugs. Definitely budget for that. Budget for power boards as well. Apparently that's what they're called. I was looking at power strips or extension leads or multi-plug extension leads. I think you know what I'm talking about. I'll put a picture on the screen, but these are called power boards apparently, and you'll probably need to buy a few of those, so that will cost you in the tens. So speaking of stuff, you're going to need to get contents insurance. If you're renting or if you've bought, you're still going to need to insure everything in your house and in your home, and that will cost you in the hundreds per year. Also car insurance. Once you've bought a car, you're going to need to insure that. That's another few hundred. You need to register at your local doctor, so find a local practice that you're happy with and register there, and they will probably ask you to come in for an initial checkup, just like a baseline checkup, and you'll have to pay for the consultation, and that is in the tens. This varies greatly from area to area and from practice to practice, so do your research before deciding on which doctor's surgery to register at, but definitely budget for that. You may be buying a new mobile phone, or you may have brought yours from wherever you lived before, but either way you're going to need a new SIM card and some data and some airtime. You can buy a new SIM card for about $20, and I do a pay-as-you-go system. It costs me about $9 a month. There are various plans that you can go with, but definitely budget for that, getting up and running with some airtime. Budget to replace the things that you chose not to bring over for whatever reason. Some of the reasons for not bringing things over are because they are prohibited in this country. You can't bring kind of natural materials in. Also things that will need professional cleaning and may be an issue we just chose to leave behind, like our lawnmower, our vacuum cleaner, our tents. So all of those things needed to be replaced once we moved over. We also didn't bring our tumble dryer and our washing machine. We just didn't feel like we could fully dry out all of the pipes before we shipped it over, and we just felt like it was going to go moldy in those 12 weeks. We also needed to use it right up until we left, and we knew we'd need one to use once we arrived. I just didn't want to do 12 weeks of running back and forth to the laundromat. If that's what you choose to do, budget for laundromat fees. Otherwise, budget to replace the items that you didn't bring over. Depending on which country you're moving from and to, you may need to budget for appropriate clothing. If you are moving from a hot country to somewhere like Canada, you're obviously going to need to buy warm clothing that's appropriate for the seasons there. Maybe you don't have wetsuits or sun hats if you've moved to somewhere like New Zealand, and you're going to need to buy those items. So that's just a line item on the budget to bear in mind. Along with that goes lifestyle goodies. So some of the things that we purchased after moving here are boogie boards, wetsuits, camping gear. Like I said, we didn't bring our tents over, camp chairs, things that we needed to buy to really enjoy the lifestyle here. Speaking of lifestyle, you may have club fees to stump up when you first arrive. Joining clubs is a great way to meet people, to make friends, and to really feel settled in your new life. So if you're joining a few clubs soon after arriving in your new country, bear in mind that you're going to need to have the money available to do that. This can range from the tens to the hundreds, depending how many clubs are being joined and by how many people in your family. If you don't have public transport and you're going to be driving everywhere, you are going to need to convert your driver's license. If you're doing a straight up conversion, this will be in the tens. If you need to reset the driving test, it's going to be in the hundreds. Also budget for extra petrol, more than you would normally spend in a month, because you're going to be doing a lot of errands, running around, setting up things, and you're also going to want to be exploring the area and driving around and seeing what there is to offer in your new country. So just bear that in mind. Your petrol costs are probably going to be high at first. And speaking of, I know it's really expensive. I've just gone through an entire video listing all of the expenses, but do budget for that initial honeymoon period or kind of holiday phase once you first arrive in your new country. Go out and about and see what the area has to offer, try different restaurants, try different foods, go sightseeing, and just really enjoy yourself. Keep that into your budget, because there's so much admin and it's really hard when you first come over. There's so much to do to kind of get set up in your new life. And you really want to balance that by going out and enjoying yourself as well. These are just some of the things to budget for when immigrating. It adds up quickly. Immigrating is expensive. When we moved from England to New Zealand, I believe we spent around 20 to 30,000 pounds in doing so. That is a lot of money, but I tell you what, it was worth every penny. We absolutely love it here, and it was the best move we ever made. If you're facing an immigration yourself, I wish you all the best of luck. Take courage. It's not easy and it's not cheap, but hopefully it will be worth it. I have a Facebook group that may be helpful to you. I will link that down below. It's for people planning on moving to New Zealand. Everybody can network, meet each other, share experiences, give recommendations of different companies or services to use. So do check that out. I also have a whole playlist of videos concerning moving to New Zealand or just emigrating in general, and I will link that down below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.